Hello everyone. So in today's session, we will see some more options in the copy data activity in the ADF pipeline. So for example, in our storage account, we have various files and subfolders. So here the requirement is based upon the last modified date. I want to copy the files from my input folder to output folder. So if we see here, we have the last modified date on 15th of this month and 17th of this month. And in the December folder, again, I have one more file with last modified date as June 15th. So I just want to load the files which is having last modified date as 6/15. So we will see that requirement, how we can achieve in copy data activity in the ADF pipeline. So I log in to my Azure Data Factory and I created a pipeline called copy activity advanced. So here I'm using the copy data activity. So based on the last modified date, I want to move the files from input to output folder. So I'm renaming this activity as copy files with last modified date. Okay, so source. So I'm creating a new data set as my source is data lake gen 2 and my file type is CSV. So I am naming it as ds underscore input last modified. So I have already linked service connection setup for the storage account. So here I'm browsing my input folder. So it is taking time to load. So in my practice root folder inside the input, so the files with last modified date as 6/15 I want to load. So here I have two files like April 2019 CSV, August 2019 CSV, and skip lines 2 CSV, and one more file in the December folder. So I want to move only the files with last modified date on 6/15/2025. Okay, I'm just choosing my input folder. I'm leaving the file name as blank. So this is my data set. So I'm choosing the wildcard path here with star.csv. So basically with this configuration, it will retrieve all the files in that input folder with CSV extension and move into the output. But I want to load only the files with last modified date as 15th. So I am just picking the date range in between. If we see here, filter by last modified. So the files with last modified time in range start time and end time. So greater than or equal to start time and less than end time. So the square brackets indicates greater than or equal to, and these close brackets indicate just less than. So and the time format should be always YYYMMDD. So this is my source. I given the data set and choosing the wildcard path in that folder, whatever the CSV file that fall under between this modified date in 6/14/2025 to 6/16/2025, and I enabled the recursively option here. So it will check the subfolders for any CSV files fall under this last modified start and end time. And I'm choosing the sync as my output. And so this data set I already created. So now the files will dump into the output folder in this practice container. Okay. So now I will validate. No errors were found. Now I will run this on the debug mode. So the expectation is only the files which are last modified in between 6/14/2025 to 6/16/2025 should be moved into my output folder. So the activity got completed. So if I go and refresh my output folder, so we can see the April 2019, since the modified date is in between that given start and end time. So this file is not moved because the last modified date is not falling within the time range. Even as I enable that recursive option, so it will go and check the subfolders inside the input folder. So since that December 2019 file date is also falling under 6/15, it loaded into the output. So let us explore the some other options in this last modified date. So here I hard coded the values. So instead of hard coding, here we can give some dynamic expressions as well. So if you click on that box, there is an option called add dynamic content. So if you click on that, pipeline expression builder will come. So if we see there are 4 tabs. So if we create any parameters at pipeline level, so those parameters will be displayed under this parameter tab, and this is the system variables, means undefined system defined variables. So from which data factory we are running this pipeline and what is the pipeline name here. So we have given the pipeline name as copy activity advanced. So that pipeline name, if we want to use it for any auditing purpose, so we can use this system variables. So now what I'm trying to do as a second scenario, so I just want to copy the files which are just modified 1 hour before. Okay, so I just want to copy the files which are modified 1 hour before. So in this start time, I will give that dynamic expression. So we have here functions. So there are various categories of functions like string, date, math, conversion, etc. So now under the date functions, I will use this add hours. So add hours function will have 2 arguments. So in the first argument, I will give that UTC now, which returns the current timestamp as a string. Okay. So whatever the system is configured, it will returns that current timestamp. So I want to check the files which are modified 1 hour before, just 1 hour before. So from this timestamp, I am subtracting 1 hour by using this add hours. So this will be my start time. So here in the end time also, I will use this add dynamic expression builder. So here I will just choose the UTC now. So instead of hard coding, I am passing those start and end time using this pipeline expression builder. So this is from the current time, it will go 1 hour back and it will returns the current time. Okay, so now I will empty my output folder. So now I will rerun my pipeline after validating it. So always run the pipeline in debug mode. If you try to run it in the add trigger, so it might consume the more credits we have. So the activity got completed. So I'm going to my output folder and refresh. So I don't have any files moved from my input to output folder. So because of now the current timestamp is 8. So there are no modified files within the last 1 hour. So what I will do, I will just pick any one file and I will edit now, so that the last modified date will be updated. So instead of C, I will put D and save this file. So if you see the last modified date is updated. So now I will rerun my pipeline. So whichever the file is modified within the last 1 hour, only that particular file should be moved from input to output folder. So whenever you run this pipeline, as we build the dynamic expression instead of hard coding, so it will take that runtime current date time. So from that it will minus 1 hour. So if I refresh my output folder, so only the files which are modified in the last 1 hour, that will be moved. So now we have seen two scenarios. One is hard coding with the start and end time, and another one is pulling for the last 1 hour. For example, there is a requirement. So whatever the start and end time they want to pass it on ad hoc basis. So let's see how we can cover that scenario. So basically the interfaces are very important here. So here I am choosing the activity. So that activity related options we will get here. So this is the copy activity. So in copy activity, we have source sync mapping. If I choose any other activity, the options for that particular activity will appear. If I click a white space on this, so these options are there: parameters, variables, settings, output. See, in output, we can see that activities that we kept running on the debug mode. Okay, so now I'm going to create a parameter here. So parameter are used to pass the values based on the requirement. So instead of hard coding, we can pass the values during the runtime. So here I'm creating two parameters. So one is the start date, and here I'm giving a value to that. So another one is end date. So here I'm giving a value. So now I want to load the files with last modified date as 6/15. Okay. So I created two values, and here I'm defining the default values for those parameters created. So in the filter by last modified, here I will map those parameters. So if you see earlier the parameters, it is appeared as blank, but now as I created the parameters at pipeline level, so those got reflected in the expression builder. So now I will clear this expression and in the start time I passing this parameter that I created called start date. So this is the parameter created at pipeline level. So pipeline dot parameters. Under the parameters I have two. So under the start time I mapped the start date. So similarly for the end time I am mapping the end date parameter. Okay, now I validate. So no errors were found, and now I will run this pipeline in the debug mode. So far we don't have any parameters, but now the pipeline parameters we have, so we can pass the values whatever we need. So now my requirement is to load the files that are modified on 17. So I'm giving the date range as 616 to 618. So the expectation is only the files that are last modified in between 616 and 618 should be moved into the output folder. So if I go to my output folder and refresh, so this is already present. So you see, I have the files that are with the last modified date as we passed the values in the parameter. So we have seen these filters last modified by hard coding and by dynamic expression, where we want to load the files that are modified 1 hour back, and by using parameters. So now we will see this skip line count option available under the source in copy data activity. So in the copy data activity, you can see here that we have the option called skip line count. So we will see that. So I am just deactivating this and I am going for a new copy data. So I am naming this activity as skip line count. So I am going into the source. So I am creating a new data set for this, as my storage is data lake gen 2 and my file is, so for example, there are different file formats, right? So here if our file format is specified, we can choose that, or some file format is not specified here, then we can go with the binary. So binary is handled, binary will support to handle any kind of file format. So I'm naming it as text. So based upon the file, the options will be vary. So for example, if I choose the text file here, see for text file, I don't have that skip lines count. So text file, I don't have that option called skip line count. Instead, I have an option called delete files after completion. So based upon the file, the properties will be vary. So delete files after completion means once the file is moved from input to output folder, it means that file got processed. So the file will auto deleted if we enable this option. So now I will change this to CSV file format. Input folder skip line CSV. Or I will go for a new data set. I will just delete and I will go for a new data set. So I'm naming it as skip line. So delimited text as my source and here I'm naming it as skip line CSV, and I'm selecting the linked service, and here I'm configuring the input skip line file. So if we see this file, how it is or how the data is there in that file. So you see here, the first three lines is there some text which is not meaning for me in order to process the file into the next layers. So I just want to skip these three files and make it as a column header and load this as a records into the two columns. So these three files I want to skip and only import this column headers and records. So how we can achieve? So as usual, here I selected my data set and I have given file path in the data set. So here we have an option called skip line count. So in that file, I want to skip 3 lines from top right. So I given that as 3, and in the sync, I will map to my output folder. So I will validate and run it in the debug mode. So here default values are coming, but I haven't configured it anywhere in the copy data activity, so that will not affect. Only if we map that parameters in anywhere, then yeah, the parameters will be applied. So make sure whatever the code changes you have done, when you publish those changes, then only um, it will be appear whenever you log into your account, or else it will not save and all the changes you made will be disappear. So this is this sorry, let me delete those files and let me rerun this job. Okay, the job got completed, and if I refresh, a file got generated. So if I go and check the data inside the file in the edit mode, so if we see that first 3 lines got skipped, and as I enabled first row as a header, so these are the headers and these are the records with that skip line. Say for example, like I have a file like this. So I have the headers in my first line, and then I have this some dummy data, and then I have the records. So if I use that skip line as 4, then I don't get that headers, right? But in my output, I want the headers and data. So let's see how we can handle this scenario. So I want to generate an file in my output folder with column header and data. Whenever the header is in the beginning of the file, so when I use skip line, all these 4 lines will got skipped, but still I want that column header. So I'm just clearing my output folder. Okay, so in the same copy data activity, I will just change my, so in the copy data activity source, I will change instead of skip lines, I will give it as 2. Okay, and if you preview the data here, so like this my file is. I have the column headers, but when I use the skip line as 4, the column headers will also got skipped. But still I want those headers in my destination. Okay. So now I will give those as 4. Skip line count as 4. And if I go to sync, it is mapped to that output data set. So now I am into the mapping tab. So far we have seen the options in the source and sync. Now I am into the mapping tab, and here I am importing the schema. So if you preview the source here, so like this it will come. So since I enabled the rows as headers in my data set, so it is taking the first row as a header. So as we have given the rows as headers in the data set, that's why it is picking the first row as header. So I will just go to the source and I am editing the data set. So here I am disabling this first row as header option. And again now I am coming into the mapping part. And if I import the schema, and if I preview the source, okay, so now as I disable the row as header, so now I got the default columns as 0 and 1. So I will just give those mappings, and I can rename the column here as ID and name. Okay, so I'm just explaining the scenario once again. So I have a CSV file called skiplines2, and if I see the data inside the file, I have the column headers in the row 1, and below I have some unwanted data. So when I use that skip line option, so these 4 uh, lines will be skipped and only the records will get loaded. So I am getting back, or I am managing that column headers in the mapping here. So mapping, I am giving the 1 as ID column and 2 as the name column. So with this as a column header, now there is an output folder. There will be a CSV file created. So I will just run this in the debug mode. So the pipeline got completed, and if I will refresh my output folder, so a file is being generated. So if I go and validate the data in the edit mode, so see that column headers has been created, like whatever the mapping we have given under the copy data activity, and under that the rows has been loaded. So this is the skip line count. If we have header just above to the rows, then that is fine. If that is not, we can create the headers by using the mapping tab in the copy data activity. So next, in general, whatever the columns that we have from the source, that will be loaded into the output file. Apart from that, if I want to create some new columns on top of the input, so I have this option, copy data activity source. So here I have an option called additional columns. So we can create the columns here. So here if you see, we have an various options called custom, file path, file name, and column, and if we want to add any dynamic content. So we will see these options one by one. So first we will explore about the file path and file name. Say for example, in my output folder, in my output or in my sync, I want to have one more column with the file name. So I can give that in the name here. So here I will give the column as file name. So this file path is not there in my source, but while it generating the file in the sync, so it will add one more column with file name and it will insert those values. So I am going to insert one more. So for example, I want to hard code any value. So for example, I have ID name from the source. I want to add one more column called country. In that I want to give the values India. So like that I am adding one more column. So here if I want to duplicate any existing column, so if I want to give that as name replica, I am giving the column name as name duplicate or name replica. So based upon, see, if I choose the inbuilt values, then I don't have this extra box. If I choose custom, so a box is appeared to hard code the value here. So as I chosen the column, so I have a drop down list here, so I can choose which column I want to duplicate. So 0 is the ID column and 1 is the name column. I want to duplicate the name column. So I can add some dynamic content also. So I can add some dynamic content also. So for example, so from which pipeline it got triggered. So whatever, or else I want, I can give some date time column as well. So at what time the columns are being generated in the sync file. So I can name it as load time, load date time. So apart from the columns that I have in the source, I created 4 columns with the various options available under this additional columns new. So if I go to the mapping here and import schema, so the latest schema will be imported. So by default, we have 2 columns like 1 and 2. So I'm naming it as ID column and I'm naming it as name column. So these columns I'm naming with the same thing. So file name from the source is mapped to the file name in the destination. So this is the country. So if you leave the column name by default, whatever it is there, it will be generated. So I'm leaving that, and this is my this is my load date time. So like that in mappings, you can map to which source column, what is the destination or sync column, and if you want, you can change the data types here. So out of these columns, you can check which column you want to load. Say for example, you don't want to load their name, as we have some duplicate column here. If we don't want to load that column into the sync, so you can manage that by using this check option as well. So in mapping, we can choose which column from source we want to map to the destination. And if there are any new columns or derived columns, we can map that to the sync part. So I'm just deleting this file from my output folder, and let's see the file being generated after this pipeline run completed. Sorry, I think that I checked that second column in the mapping tab. So I guess only that second column will be available in that skip lines to file in the output folder. So if I go and refresh my output, so a file is generated. Okay, so all the, see, these two are like base columns, and apart from that, this file name, country, column 5, which is duplicate of this name column, and the load date and time which we add from the expression builder. So new columns are also generated. Okay, this is the new column. Yep. So these are some of the options available in the copy activity. So in yesterday's session, we have seen that source and sync. And apart from that, today we have seen the filter with last modified, these three scenarios, and skip line count, and with new column and the mapping tab. So in next session, we will see get metadata and for each loop activities with dynamic parameter in the data set. Thanks for your time.